In this video, we're going to be developing a roll of film from the 50s found in this 1938 Rolle Konter TLR. To start, I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed recently. It's really cool that you like the videos and that you share the same passion for vintage cameras and film photography that I do. Now, in regards to this camera, I picked it up on eBay a few weeks ago, and the only reason why I got it was because there was still film inside, and I wanted to make another video where we develop an old roll of film and try to recover the photos on it. When I got this camera, the roll of film was approximately halfway finished, so I went ahead and took the 2 or 3 photos that were left on it. And yeah, so this video is us developing this roll of film, trying to recover the photos. But before we start, I do want to take 5 minutes just to go over the history behind this camera, because the history behind this camera itself is really interesting. The Rolle Konter was made by a company called Mori Seisakusho in Japan from 1938 to 1944, and this one in particular is an early 1938 example because the name Rolle Konter is still 2 words, whereas later on it would just be 1 word. Now, I didn't know how rare these cameras are. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, or Camerapedia, at least 2 other examples exist with the original nameplate. And even though this camera is more or less a copy of the 1936 Rolle cord, and the name itself is meant to mimic Rolle cord or Ikonta's icon sided cameras, these cameras, when they were brand new, they were still really expensive, and they're actually really well made. Brand new, when this camera came out in 1938, it cost 210 Japanese yen, which is the equivalent to about $1,200 US, and a Rolle cord at the time cost $1,500. Now, when the war broke out, Rolle cord and reflex production ceased, so this camera kind of stepped in as the premium copy of those cameras available on the market. And after the war ended, they stopped making the Rolle Konter, and this company that produced these started making the Beaker Flex. So I don't know if there were any kind of copyright issues after Rolle cords were back into production, but yeah, these were only made between 1938 and 1944. So now let's go over some of the features of this camera. Starting from the front, you have your viewing lens. It's an f3.2 75mm lens. Later Rolle Konters, after the initial model, had an f3.5 lens, so that part of it changed. The taking lens is a 3-element uncoated lens. It's a 75mm f3.5 Hitonar lens. Now, apparently Hitonar, the way it's spelled in Japanese, is very similar to the way you spell Hitler. So I don't know if these cameras were sort of destined to court the German market and German buyers, but that is an interesting fact about this camera. The shutter speed settings are 1 second to 1/300th of a second with B, bulb, and timed exposure mode. The interesting thing is on this camera is that the shutter still works fine. Typically what I found with older Japanese cameras is the shutter seizes up, I think maybe because of the types of greases they used, or perhaps the climate it was exposed to. And even though the shutter says Compor, this is just a copy. It's not a real Compor shutter. The f-stops are from f3.5 to f36, just like the Rolle cord, the 1936 Rolle cord. Here's your focus knob. It says Rolle Konter work. So again, this means nothing. It's just it's to make it seem like it was produced by some sort of German factory. Here you have your focus knob. It goes from infinity. Typically, Rolle cords and Rolle flexes stop at 0.8, which is 80 centimeters. And this one goes all the way to M, which is roughly 70 centimeters. So it focuses closer than the model that it copies. This is your film advance. So you unlock it by pressing this lever down. It has a film counter that automatically stops on each exposure. And you press up to reset the frame counter. Now on Camerapedia, I read that nobody was really sure how to reset the counter because so little information exists on this model. So to reset the counter, you flip it up to R and it resets it. On this side are your spool releases. On the back, you have an exposure table in English. Here's a red window where you line up your 6x9 markings on your film. And up top is your plain ground glass viewing screen. This one's very dim because the mirror is corroded. You have a pop-up magnifier, which needs a little help on this guy. And the cool thing is, just like the Rolle Cords and Rolle Flexes of the period, you have a mirror that lets you focus during eye level shooting because you can see the ground glass. So that's an interesting feature. And that is about it. Alright, actually, you know what? Let me open the back. And there is the film chamber. And there is our Ansco All-Weather Film. It's based on the black backing and silver letters, plus the wooden core. From what I can see, is this film should date from the mid-50s. So let's take it to the darkroom, let's develop it, and let's see if we have anything on here worth sharing. And yeah, so let's go and do that right now. So I'm going to develop this roll of film the exact same way that I developed the roll of film in the Ghost in the Roll video. So we're going to use Ilfosol 3 at a dilution of 1 parts developer, 14 parts water, and we're going to develop it for 9 minutes at a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So hopefully again we'll have something worth sharing, and I'm excited to see what's possibly on this roll.
You're taking pictures. How nice, says she. I hope they turn out.
They will, says he. How, says the boy, can a fellow miss with a model like you and a film like this? The young man's film is Ansco All-Weather Film. The only film so sure to get good pictures it's guaranteed. Snapshots that delight you or a new roll of film free.
If Ansco makes it so easy to do, why, says the girl, don't I take you?
And a kind friend happening along that way makes it a happy Ansco day by taking some close-ups of the two that they both will cherish. Wouldn't you?
Alright, so I watched the film, and now is the moment of truth to see if there's anything on it. I didn't peek, so hopefully we have something. Looks like we have something, hopefully. Alright, let's hang it up. Alright, so I had the exact same problem with this film as I did with the one in the other video I did, meaning that it just kept retaining its shape. It was extremely difficult to get on the roll. So looks like there's a few images on here, and there's also some images that I took, which also turned out alright. The weird thing is this film is extremely thin. It almost feels as thin as paper. looks like there's an image on the bottom. So instead of using that clip, I'll use a couple of coat hangers so that we can still scan the last image. All right, let's let it dry.